I'll just go ahead and follow that stream link and grab it out of there.
Okay. It's redirecting on my side here, so.
All right, live stream link is working. It's live in Canvas.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Matt. We just put up the live stream.
Alrighty, thank
you. Just now. It looks good in Sakai and Canvas, James, so we're good to go.
Alrighty, thank you.
Excellent.
All right. We're going to go ahead and shut down. Matt, do you have polling features available for yourself along the bottom nav?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I hope we can just do voice votes. We won't be voting on the Senate, the handbook changes today.
Okay.
Those have to percolate. So as far as I know, the only motion that we will be voting on is the motion to ratify Ahmad as Senate president. Or sorry, yeah, we should ratify him as Senate president. I was done with my job.
Ahmad, you got a new job, but yeah, he's on here.
As chair of CNR. Is he on? He probably is. He'll be glad he wasn't on.
No, you should be good. If you do have to run a poll, you should be just ready to rock and roll down there. If not, just give James a holler.
Yeah, I've done this before.
Perfect.
In classes.
Perfect. All right, we're going to.
So we could run a test for all these people who are logged on without their videos, which I've done with my students. Ask them if they are still in their pajamas. The other question that's popular is, have you washed your hair in the last 2 days?
Ooh.
I am not in my pajamas.
Thank you. You didn't need to tell us.
I've got on a Bradley baseball shirt from, I don't know, 1998-ish.
So
totally pajama worthy.
So I don't know if you guys can see my blackboard. I've decided to change the agenda this afternoon. We're just going to do Calculus 3.
Works for me.
I will get an F minus.
There's an app for it, I'm sure.
That should get us started in Physics 1.
Matt, for the motion that for Ahmad will be president of the CNR, is that also that the provost will be a member?
So yes, there is an amendment. We have to amend the handbook to do that. When we changed it last year to have the Senate exec appoint the chair or nominate the chair of CNR, we just forgot that by not listing the provost as the chair, that he was no longer going to be a member. And so there's a handbook change. I think it's the third item from Senate exec to change the handbook so that Walter has to attend those meetings.
Can we put him down that he has to go to all meetings?
Yeah. So I think he was attending CNR anyway. He knew it was an oversight. So
no, he wasn't. Not for a while.
Oh, didn't he go to a couple of them?
That's right. He did not.
All right. So it's good we put him back on. What it shows is there's always unintended consequences when you change handbook language.
Sure.
Let's see here. Make sure I can do a share screen. Maybe I'll put the copy of the agenda up here. I think this is the one we want. And, oh no, I can't get. All right, let's see. Maybe I finally have the technology figured out after using it all semester.
Be careful when you say that. So I had a meeting with Walter the other day, and I ended up being on there twice, and him.
Yeah,
And so we got echoes all over the place.
I will not promise that I know what I'm doing. It's amazing. That's one of the things that I don't think anyone expected. You think the technology is all set up, ready to go, and something weird happens, and you spend class time trying to figure out technology instead of covering material.
Yeah, that's my worry on evals, that they're going to be about my ability to handle technology, not my ability to teach.
You know, I was surprised as chair, you know, I get to read, I don't know, 2,200 course evaluations every year, something like that. And second semester last year, there were only maybe a dozen comments about the technology.
Yeah, my
I can
worry is
say that
they'll give it the
students-
pass on spring and not on fall. So we'll see.
What Emma
Yeah.
said. Emma, what'd you say?
I was just going to say that from a student's point of view, we're just appreciative that all the professors are trying so hard with the technology. So I doubt you'll get super harsh criticism on the technology side of things.
Man, I
But-
hope so.
I do too. We just ran a survey in our college for all engineering students, and out of the top 10 complaints, that was one of them, that we were still having challenges with the technology.
Yeah, Lex, do you know, is it, I don't know how to say this delicately, is it professorial incompetence or is it something else?
Yes, because when their microphone's not working and the students tell him and he doesn't fix it, well,
Well, maybe he can't hear them either, or she.
The most common mistake is saying to everybody, I can't hear you when I just have my mute button on and I just need to unmute my computer. That's an embarrassing moment for sure.
Yeah, so hopefully that won't happen to me today. I don't claim expertise, so. How are we doing time-wise here? My clock is blocked. Oh, it is time to call the meeting to order. Is there some chance that we have a quorum? Can somebody see a count? Well, let's see here. I can do it this way.
Matt, it says there's 53 in the room.
All right. We'll pretend that I'll give folks another minute or two before we start then. And here comes some more. Yeah, I think people will keep trickling in here for a moment, but I am going to call the meeting to order. I wanted to just start off with a couple of brief reminders here. First off, the meeting is being recorded. By staying logged in, you are acknowledging that you approve of being recorded. There are still vacancies on faculty grievance. I will make the same threat to this body that I made to Senate Exec when we noticed this at Senate Exec earlier in the month. If we would have a grievance and we do not have a full slate of individuals on that committee, people in this meeting today are among the first I will call to sit in on the grievance committee. So if senators, if you have folks that you know that would make good people to serve on that committee, please try to talk them into doing so and forward their name to me. So far, as far as I know, we do not have any grievances pending. Little update on the ad hoc faculty handbook revision committee. Remember, what this committee is doing is the simple part of handbook revision. When we get to more complicated things, we will constitute a larger body, a more representative body. Right now, what we're focused on are the so-called process 3 items in the handbook. Process 3, for those of you that are new, refers to how those parts of the handbook can be changed. And the process 3 changes are ones that an appropriate administrator or administrative body can make the changes, then has to just report them to the Senate. And so really what process 3 items are informational items. And because we now have the web, it no longer makes sense to actually have them included in the Senate. And so the committee is very close to recommending that all these process 3 items be removed from the handbook. For those of you, again, that haven't spent a lot of time mucking around in the handbook, if you're interested in what some of these process 3 items are, if you would go to article Roman numeral 5, Roman numeral V, starting on page 200, essentially all of article V is stuff that is informational in one sense or another, and we intend to recommend that that whole section just be yanked out of the handbook. But if you'd like to see what some of this process 3 stuff is, go read through that, and you'll see why it no longer needs to be in the handbook. It will be posted someplace on the web, but it really doesn't need to be in the handbook anymore. Any questions about any of that stuff? Hearing none. I forgot to put in the agenda that I sent out that we need to approve the minutes of the second regular meeting. I would entertain such a motion.
So moved.
That was Lex Akers who made the motion. Second, please. Fred Tayari seconded, even though his mic was off, I saw him wave.
Yeah, I turned it on. Second.
Okay, thanks, Fred. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Any additions? Hearing none, let's do a voice vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. And the motion carries. Now let's see if the technology works. It appears to be. All right, so it's time to hear a report from our student body president, Emma Hoyta. Emma, do you need to share screen? I can take mine down.
I don't actually. I don't have anything super formal. I just had just a couple of things that I wanted to verbally say and share with you all. First of all, I very much apologize that this is the first time that I've been able to sit down with you all. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And just a big thank you to everyone that affects student lives right now. I've tried to tell the people that have stood in my place to extend that thank you, but I sincerely mean it. And you guys are doing really, really well. And we're, as students, we're very thankful, even though many students might not be voicing that right now, as we're all, stressed out of our minds. But since the last University Senate meeting, our request for pass-fail this semester has been denied. And I just wanted to voice a couple of things about that and maybe have a request or two. But as maybe you have seen, there's still a lot of push from students for us to continue to ask for it, push a little harder on the administration. But I would like to say that I am very much in support of the administration and their decision to not move forward with pass-fail, and I've made that very clear. The one thing that we did request, however, was an explanation as to why pass-fail was denied. And at this point, I'd like to just throw in a big thank you to the deans that allowed us to come speak at the deans meeting a couple months ago. That was by far the most positive experience out of this whole ordeal. And we, as Senate, we're very thankful for that opportunity. But after that, we, as I said, requested for an explanation as to why pass-fail was denied. We still have yet to receive answer back, but on November 5th, there was an email sent out to all students stating that pass-fail had been denied. Many students didn't even know that pass-fail was an option. It caused much undue stress on students as it wasn't something necessarily on their minds, or if it was, that announcement just was generally unneeded in my eyes and in the eyes of other student senators. And so with all that said, students just feel very unheard, and not specifically asking for pass-fail anymore. We're simply asking for some sort of support. And I have friends that have been straight A students their whole school careers, getting Ds, getting Cs, things that they've never experienced before. This isn't about a lack of commitment to their classes. This is just about going through the most difficult year of our lives, and everything from roommate stressors and family stressors and illness, everything rolled up into one, along with not having any breaks throughout the semester, and now looking into next semester, not having any breaks. We just feel very unsupported, and that there's nothing coming from the administrative level to help us. And so tonight, actually, there is a student forum of sorts going on where students are gonna be able to voice their ideas and concerns to the president. And so we're very thankful for that. But it's late. We're getting to crunch time, and we're getting to the point where it feels like, finals are coming, but it feels just a little bit too late for us. And we've definitely lost a lot of hope in that regard. So all of this being said, I would just love and request if, from a professor's point of view and standpoint, if just you could all keep a special ear out for what students are requesting. This being online does not make school easier. It makes it far harder, and many of the things that are holding us back are completely out of our control. And we just need the people around us, our professors, our advisors, to listen and to relay all the messages that they're hearing to their superiors and to the administration, because right now it feels like students are screaming at the top of their lungs into an empty void where our requests and our desires aren't being heard. So that's everything that I have to say. We have no new projects coming up or anything like that. We have lots of things in the works for next semester, but nothing that felt worthy of coming before you all today. So if you have any more specific questions, feel free to email me or anything like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Does anyone have any questions for Emma?
I do. It's Danielle Glassmeyer. Emma, thank you for your statements about that. I appreciate it a lot, and it does cohere with lots of stuff I've been hearing in my classes. I wanted to ask if the forum for this evening, is it open to others, or is it strictly students and the president? How are people allowed to attend?
At this point, I believe it's closed, but it's been an invite to specific students that are both very involved in campus, like me and other student senators, as well as less involved students. So at this point, I believe it's closed, but I'd be happy to reach out to you if you have any specific things that you'd like to talk about.
Okay. Any other questions for Emma?
Well, if I may, I have a question. Some students are under probation, and how this pass-fail will help to improve their status. Let's say if the student is in the final stages of the progress and will not have that many opportunities to improve grade. And so if a student's under probation, finish all the course requirement with pass, and the student cannot graduate.
So as far as so this is ultimately the issue that I'm facing, is that I've wanted to understand the denial of pass-fail for that very reason, because the reasoning that we were given is that it's just too much work on the financial aid side of things, as well as, losing scholarship, losing ability to graduate on time, anything like that. So that's the greatest issue, is that we don't know. We haven't been given that information. I reached out to financial aid services personally. I also reached out to the provost's office, and we just haven't received that information. So the reason that we keep pushing for this is, as far as we know, and I know more, but as far as your average student knows, it's just a wall that the university has put up for no particular reason, just because they don't want to. So I completely understand that there are barriers in exactly that way, in that people wouldn't be able to graduate on time or wouldn't be able to receive their financial aid. So in short, I don't have that answer, though I wish I did.
Thank you.
Anything else for Emma? Okay, I'm hearing, I think, Emma, thank you very much. And again, we'll check to see if the technology works. You may have noticed, by the way, that I've switched up the order of the agenda a little bit. This was done so that, we've done a very good job over the first two meetings of grilling the administration. And I do want to give you the opportunity to continue the grilling, but we have other business that we need to get done. So I've flipped the reports from administrators to the end. And I am also going to, Senate Exec has 4 motions for the body. I'm going to limit debate. 3 of these are handbook changes. We aren't going to be able to vote on the handbook changes anyway. This time, because they need to ferment or gestate or percolate, whatever analogy you prefer. So I am going to limit debate on these motions if I have to. I don't know that we will. My thinking was to allow about 15 or 20 minutes of discussion of each motion, and then, if needed, and then move on to the next motion. And that'll still give the administrators some time at the end. It might in fact be the case that the discussion of these motions carries over into the February meeting, but we need to get them on to the Senate floor in case, just because of the fermentation requirement, or fermentation expectation. It's not a requirement, that tradition. So this first one is not a handbook change. This is consistent with the current language in the handbook and the handbook language about the election of the chair of, or selection of chair of curriculum and regulations is now in the handbook, thanks to Ethan Ham for updating that. This is coming from Senate Exec. It does not need a second. It's a motion to ratify the nomination of Ahmad Fakhari as chair of the Curriculum and Regulations Committee. So is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Seems as though there was a little bit of confusion or some conversation about the chair's nomination from the committee itself. I was wondering, is there still such instability in the committee, or do we have a? Are we
So
now?
Kevin, the current handbook language, which was approved last year, says that the chair will be nominated by Senate exec and ratified by the committee,
Right.
by this full Senate. There is a motion that we will be putting forward shortly about the selection with regard to membership on the CNR. In particular, the provost was getting to skip those meetings, and we really don't want that to be the case. So we're going to fix that. Other amendments are welcome.
Okay. Well, I was just curious because it seemed as though there was a little bit of a question about that from the committee itself. I was wondering if we could hear again from the committee, or because my vote.
We just lost your volume, Kevin. You just got muted. I did not do that, by the way.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seemed there was a question from the committee last time, and I understand that the actual vote is from the Senate, but it would be nice to know that there wasn't a consternation from the committee.
Folks are welcome to comment.
I'm on the committee. I have no problem with this. I like the idea that we'll look at more strategic activities rather than, I mean, sometimes this meeting lasts 15 minutes. And there's some very strategic things I think we should look at. And Ahmad has pledged to do that.
Are there other comments from senators?
This is Kelly McConaughey. I'm also on CNR, and I can tell you that the biggest concern that CNR raised, in addition to getting the provost back as an ex officio member on the committee, the concern was that in other Senate standing committees, it appears that the committee membership elects the chair from their membership, and we were curious why this was an appointment from Senate exec. It seems to be rather outside the norm, and so that was the discussion that we had. I thought that there was maybe some motion to have this committee realigned such that the chair was elected from committee membership, but I don't see that on the floor, so it must not have risen to Senate exec at any level. But I'm just responding to Kevin's question, and there are certainly another half a dozen or so Senate members who are part of CNR who can speak to this. I'm just going based on my memory, and I don't have notes in front of me, so I apologize, Kevin, if I'm giving an incomplete summary, but that's my memory.
This is Wendy. I'm on the CNR, and I think Kelly's got it remembered correctly. So we're cool with Ahmad as chair. I think he probably would have been the one selected. But yes, still is a question of who gets to select the chair. And I think that's BJ was drafting something, so I imagine it'll come up eventually.
So are there other questions about the ratification vote, prior to the ratification vote? Comments?
I just have one quick comment. There are other standing committees that do not select their own chair. I don't know if that matters in this particular case or not, but just to clarify.
Any other comments? I would like I'll be silent for a moment. Hearing none, I'd like to again try this with a voice vote. If that does not seem to work out well, then I'll do a poll. So all those in favor of the motion to ratify the nomination of Ahmad Fakhari as chair of the Committee on Curriculum and Regulations signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
I believe the ayes have it. So let us go on to the next item. And this one, this is the motion to change the handbook language for Committee on Diversity and Inclusion. A couple of these are fixing typos. The committee, even after changing its name last year, there were still places in the handbook where it said Committee on Affirmative Action. Those are actually editorial changes. They don't need to be voted on, but I highlighted them anyway. And then the main change is here, how to select the committee chair. And as pointed out, not all chairs are selected the same way on all Senate committees. So I'll give you a moment. Again, this is coming from Senate Exec. So we don't need a second. And I'll give you a moment to read it. And then if folks have comments, feel free to start the discussion.
So Matt, we're looking at the, sorry, I had double booked myself. The committee shall elect its own chairperson.
Yes, that's the changes are in red font.
Okay. I'm gonna say that I'm super puzzled by the phrase "made available to all full-time faculty," especially the full-time faculty part. That why the procedure shall only be made available to all full-time faculty, that just puzzled the heck out of me. I mean, we are a university senate and the things on the committee affect faculty and student body. So, and those things affect more than just the full-time faculty. So that phrase just really puzzled the heck out of me.
Can anyone speak to that? You know, this was written up so long ago. It's been on several agendas, which we have not gotten to. Can anybody remember why that phrase is in the in item 3 here? Can anybody remember?
If I remember correctly, I think the same language is in several other committees. Somebody can look up the handbook. I think this was lifted off of some other committee.
I mean, we could certainly entertain a motion to amend this to change the phrase "to all full-time faculty made available to the campus community," for instance.
That seems like a phrasing that would be under the intent of this change.
Do I hear a motion to amend this in that manner?
Do I move?
Was that Fred who made the motion?
Yes.
Second?
I would second.
All right, Meg is seconding. I think I am competent enough. We will see here. Oops, nope. Let's see here. I got to end my slideshow for a minute. Come back over here. Can you guys still see what I'm doing?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I don't know how to do strikeout in PowerPoint. I don't know if we can. Font. Is
I
there
think
a
it's under
strikeout?
style.
Where are we at here?
It's under font style and not font text.
Style, regular.
Effects. Go to effects or strike through.
No, yeah, right there on the.
I see it. I see it.
Found
Thank you
it.
very much. And let me put in here. I like blue.
It would be pretty light.
Okay, to the campus community. Let me get rid of the capital there. So we have a motion.
You need to add a T to the.
Oh. Thank you much. Oh, it's the wrong color though. We can't have that. All right. So the amendment is changing item 3 to the committee shall elect its own chairperson and establish its internal operating procedures. I'm reading that, saying that from memory, which shall be made available to the campus community or something to that effect. You guys can see what's up there. Any discussion of the amendment? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. The amendment carries. So now the motion is as indicated. And just to show that, we will delete this. And we will change this to red font. All right. Is there any additional discussion of this motion at this meeting? Anybody have
Matt,
other comments?
I'd like to suggest another potential change.
Okay.
In the second to last sentence of number 1, the phrase implementation of affirmative action policies strikes me as arcane as the title, the old title of the committee, the old name of the committee.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't thought about what the language should be. Implementation of diversity and equity efforts, but that's just kind of me off the top of my head.
Walter, what I would suggest is, since we will be revisiting this at the next meeting.
Okay, I can think about it before then.
Yeah, if you would like to think of the appropriate language to insert there, I'm sure the Senate would be receptive to that change when we return to this discussion in December.
Okay.
Mr. President, can I ask a question? What is that symbol after part 1?
You know what? That's something that's in the handbook. I think it's showing a date. It's a link to a date or something, and I did not know how to remove it. So that's something that comes out of the PDF in the handbook.
All right, thank you.
So what, Fred, I think that was Fred, wasn't it?
Yes.
You just exposed my technological ignorance. So other comments, anything else about this motion? Hearing none, let's see here. Can I go back to the slideshow version? All right, can you guys see that okay now?
Yes.
All right, and let's go to the next motion. Again, this is coming from Senate Exec, so it does not need a second. And I'll let you read it and then speak to why Senate Exec is proposing this.
Matt, did we actually vote on the preceding?
Yeah, we had to vote.
Did we vote on the preceding motion?
No, on the
going to be deferred until the next meeting?
We're gonna, do we need to have an official motion to postpone, or is it okay to just let it carry over?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So the change here is requiring members of faculty grievance to be tenured faculty. From Senate Exec's perspective, this seems reasonable. It does not seem reasonable to put non-tenured faculty members on this committee due to the the things which could be very sensitive and have negative consequences for their own tenure decisions if they have to make a controversial decision. So that was the reasoning. Is there discussion? Wow.
I guess, Matt, oh, sorry. You said wow, and then I had an idea. This is
okay,
Danielle.
Go ahead.
I guess given your announcement at the beginning of the meeting and the difficulties with staffing it, what are the repercussions of limiting the pool of available people?
Well, since nobody's volunteering, there's no repercussions.
Well, yeah, but that's what I mean is like, if we limit it further, are we creating a committee that cannot run?
I'm going to get on my high horse here. I find it very disturbing that we consistently have problems filling faculty grievance and tenure promotion and dismissal. I think the faculty as a body is failing in their responsibility to each other by not putting the names of enough people to fill these two committees forward. And it is deeply disturbing. Of all of the committees on campus, curriculum is certainly the most important from a programmatic perspective and in terms of our responsibility to our students. But we also have a responsibility to ourselves and to our colleagues. And that responsibility is primarily filled through service on these two really important committees. And so I will challenge folks when Senate Elections sends out the nominating forms for this, go out and get people to serve. I would rather have 50 people nominated to serve on this committee and have to choose between them than to have the situation we've had for, I don't know, probably the last 10 years, where we consistently have difficulty filling TPD and faculty grievance. So my apologies.
No, this is Danielle again, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's some of the most important service that we do, because it is assuring that our fellows have the opportunity to have due process when situations arise that are adverse. And so I agree wholeheartedly, and I agree that they should be tenure. And so I raised my question earlier as that question of practicality. So you can pay me $1 later for giving you the opportunity to say what you said, Matt.
Well, thank you, Danielle. Other comments about the motion? I will temper my comments. Hearing none, boy, I'm surprised. You know, it's really a good idea to put motions before the Senate when everyone's tired. We can get through lots of them. All right. So here is the fourth motion from Senate Exec. This is a motion to fix the problem with having left the provost off the committee. I know Walter was looking forward to not having to attend those meetings, but we're going to make him go. So assuming the motion passes. So again, this is coming from Senate Exec, so it does not need a second. Is there discussion?
I have a point on that number 4 in red, that supposed to be senior vice president.
Oh. Walter, what's the order for your title?
It's as you have it there, it would be provost and senior vice president.
Okay. Fred, was that you again?
Yes.
Was that a motion to amend?
I made a motion then.
All right. May I have a second?
Second.
All right. I got to go out of my share screen again here.
I'm thinking you could just treat that as an editorial change rather than
I second that comment.
An amendment.
Second that comment. All right. So we didn't need a motion. All right. I will defer to our parliamentarian here. So I'm gonna fix this here, and I suspect this would have passed overwhelmingly anyway.
I'll abstain, so I'm not voting out of self-interest on this.
Okay. Were you going to vote for or against, Walter?
I was probably going to vote against.
We're not voting on this anyway. This is a handbook change. So does anybody have any other comments? All right, hearing none. Well, thank you very much, people. I'm glad we got all these on the floor. If the discussion of any of these would carry over into February, that's okay, but I wanted to get them on the floor so we could deal with these, several of them. They're all important. Now let's see, will the technology work? All right. Our consent agenda are the first, I don't know, what are they, 10 or 15 items here on the consent agenda from curriculum and regulations. Would anyone like to pull any of those first batch in black font out for additional discussion? Hearing none, they carry by consent. We do need motions for the program modifications and the minor modifications, the major and minor modifications. So could I have a motion to approve the major modification for civil engineering?
Burl George, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Burl. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Lex Akers. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. I believe the ayes have it. I would consider a motion to approve the minor modification for EHL Health.
I'll make that motion.
That was Teresa Drake. May I have a second?
I'll second Danielle.
I think there were 2 seconds, but I'll give it to Danielle.
Yay.
I'm not sure who the other person was. Their screen is not up on my screen. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minor modification for EHS Health signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Let's see here. I forget what's next. Oh, I remember what's next. Old business, the stop the clock motion. So let me recap a little bit of the last meeting. I missed most of this, so Teresa might have to help me with the recap. We started off with a slightly different motion. The first motion carried. Basically, what the first motion did was cut off I believe, a bottom paragraph. And the new motion is there in italics at the top. The second motion, Amendment 2, was under consideration at the close of the last meeting. It was a replacement for the sentence which had been removed. And there was a motion to postpone this discussion until this meeting, and I would like to resume that discussion. So are there additional comments at this time? I hear none. Are we ready to vote? All right, I'm going, all those in favor of Amendment 2 signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, so the amendment carries. The full motion, this is PDF. I can't get in there and do fancy editing in this screen. I just did a cut and paste from PDF. So I can't do the editing. The full motion is the top paragraph and then the sentence contained in Amendment 2. So it's the 3 or 4 sentences at the top plus this last sentence at the bottom is what's now under consideration. Is there any additional discussion?
I have a question. If a faculty member goes up for tenure, let's say this fall, and at some point gets a negative recommendation, does the faculty member have the option of withdrawing and applying next year or year after?
So if I read, as I read the amendment, by applying, they are opting out of any extension and would not be able to, but that's just my reading. I don't know.
That would be my, I hadn't thought about it, Ahmad, but that would be my understanding also. So the application is the opting out under the current language.
Okay.
I had a question. This is Danielle. I had a question about, and it's about the distinction that we're making between, and I think I understand it, right? The distinction that we're making between faculty starting prior to fall 2020 and faculty members starting in 2020. Too much information and stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not disadvantaging those faculty members who start in 2020. What I mean by that is that they too have had, and I think we're not, I think it's fair, but I've looked at the numbers and the language too much, because they had the same terrible spring as the people who were with us, right? So last spring was terrible for faculty members, old and new. And so I just wanted to make sure that I'm kind of reading too much into this, right? That's my hope, is that you're all going to tell me that it is being fair to those people who have just started with us, that we're giving them that same consideration that we're giving to the ones who happen to be hired a year or 2 or 3 earlier.
I can speak to this from my experience on the LAS Dean's Tenure Promotion Advisory Committee. And there is a basis for this in the handbook. We do not consider for tenure and promotion things which were done prior to starting at Bradley, other than meeting the minimum qualifications for hiring. So I think that's the context in which this, if that's fair, then this is fair.
Okay.
So I know that's a relative statement, but this is just as fair as the current process.
Well, the basis in existing policy seems sufficient for me. So filling that in, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, you know what? I don't know that we thought about it that way, but based on my experience on the LAS TPD, I think it is consistent with at least the way our college functions. And I don't know if one of the deans want to speak to this in relative to what happens at the university level or not. That I assume it's a similar sort of consideration there.
Matt, I would say when I originally worked on this idea, that was my intention, is that somebody starting in the fall of 2020 didn't need the same kind of consideration as somebody who had started at Bradley earlier than that.
Okay. So, other discussion, other questions? Okay, I just throw in one more thing. Remember, we're not adding this to the handbook language. This is just a statement on policy. And with that said, one last time, any questions, comments? And let us vote. All those in favor of adopting the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. And the ayes have it. Thank you much. All right. We have time for a few comments from the president, provost, and CFO, COO. I'm going to stop my screen share and turn the microphone over to President Standiford.
Great. Thank you, Matt. You all can hear me okay? Somebody give me a thumbs up to make sure. Okay, great, perfect. So I'm going to keep my comments relatively brief. I know one of the things it's been a long, tiring semester, and everybody's a little stretched right now. But I do want to highlight a couple things. It's interesting. I really appreciate Emma's presentation earlier today. Emma and I've talked on a number of occasions, and she's pushing in all the right ways. She has been, I think, a really fantastic advocate for the students, and I appreciate the work that she's done. It's interesting. One of the things that obviously has been a big conversation is this issue of the pass-fail option. And that's something we've talked about extensively. I think Walter could acknowledge we've really pushed that variable hard to really try to understand what makes sense there. And after a fairly lengthy conversation with people that I trust and have come to appreciate their expertise here on campus, we don't think it's in the best interest of the students. That's something that's a conclusion we've come to. And I think in some fairly lengthy conversations with Emma, she's come to peace with that as well. and I would obviously, if she feels different, I want her to be able to chime in and say so. One of the tricky things is sufficiently complicated that it's tough to summarize easily, and as a result, we haven't been able to communicate it well. And that's something that we need to figure out how to do better. So I'm actually excited that we're going to be having a conversation later today with a group of students to start talking through some of these issues. Really tough to do in an email or in a discussion that is short in nature or video. So one of the things we've got to do a better job of, and Emma's pushed us on this in all the right ways, is to start having those conversations openly with students. So we've got one of those coming up today, and we'll hopefully be doing some more. For what it's worth, we've done a fair amount of benchmarking with other universities, and what I would consider our peer institutions, and a lot of the institutions that we look at are also making the option of not doing a pass-fail this semester for the same reasons we're not doing it. But I just know that we hear the students' frustrations on this. They're tired, they're exhausted, they're stressed, as is much of the world. And one of the things we're looking to do is have more of a dialogue with them. So I just wanted to share that update with you. I also know it's been heard a noise. I don't know if there's a question and all that, but feel free to ask questions along the way if there are any. I know it's also been a really major lift for everyone on campus. And this has been said kind of throughout the semester, but this has been a semester unlike anything I've seen, and I suspect unlike anything most of you has seen as well. It has been a major lift to get through the semester. But despite the ongoing challenges, and I'll talk a little bit about next semester, we're not out of the woods on this one yet at all. We've got another tough semester ahead of us. I do think it's worth pausing and recognizing that it is Thursday, the day before the last day, before we actually go into Thanksgiving break. And once we go into Thanksgiving break, we will no longer be doing classes on campus. I'm always very careful when I mention this, that I know classes don't end at the end of this week, but the on-campus experience ends this week. And I think it's time to pause and recognize that we actually, unless something very strange happens, almost makes me nervous to say this tonight. I'd rather say it tomorrow night, but unless something very strange happens, we will have finished the semester on campus successfully. And there are more than a few people that thought that was going to be impossible. So we actually did pull it off. It was not without challenges. The quarantine, I know, was very stressful for everyone, faculty, students, and staff, everyone involved. But we were able to pull it off. And I think the reason we were able to pull this off is because of amazing work on two fronts. First of all, a huge shout out to the faculty specifically and the staff that were involved, but the virtual nature of the classes, the hybrid nature of the classes. I know it's been incredibly challenging, and especially as we went in and out of times where students were or were not able to be in class, that was very, very challenging. But it worked. It's something we were able to actually successfully do. And I also want to give a huge shout out to our students and their behaviors that allowed us to get to this point. You all have probably seen there's been no end of articles that have screamed at and yelled at and blamed students for the spread of COVID-19. In fact, there was a piece that came out in USA Today talking about students going home and spreading coronavirus as part of the Thanksgiving break. And just to let you know, one of the things I'm actually working on, I won't even put a single word to paper until the break, but I'm actually working on a piece, an op-ed piece I want to do talking about college students as a role model for how to act during a pandemic. Because I personally think our students have done a pretty remarkable job. It hasn't been perfect, but as a group, they've done a pretty remarkable job to help us get to this point. And I think it's something we need to recognize and celebrate. So real thrilled about that. I wanted to talk just a little bit about what next semester looks like. I know there's been a lot of conversation and questions around next semester. There's some really encouraging news about the vaccines. I was reading again today, I was actually joking, the senior leadership team, I think we're all going to get certificates in epidemiology when this is all said and done, because we're learning things about virus management that I don't think any of us ever wanted to know, but we're getting there. We're developing some sense of understanding. What I've been able to read and ascertain is the vaccine will maybe even be distributed at some limited level, 12 million samples or so by the end of this year. However, it will probably be well into next semester before we start seeing the impact of the vaccine in a way that we would hope it would create an environment on campus. So think of it as a curve that's going to start changing and then go down in a positive way. The last report I've heard that from, again, reading from folks that I've come to trust and respect, is suggesting that assuming the vaccines continue to have the impact that we want them to have, it'll be probably June or July before things get back to looking like normal. Now, it'll start getting better as the semester goes on. So my suspicion is we'll be able to perhaps, as the semester evolves, get a little less aggressive in some of the restrictions that we follow. But we're going to have to go into next semester looking a lot like what it looks like this semester. The wild card for us that will perhaps be a little bit different is what our testing routine looks like. I've gotten a number of questions about, are we in conversations with the testing protocol that's happening at the University of Illinois? The short answer is we are, but that's more complicated than we thought it would be. In fact, we thought at one point they might actually locate a testing facility here in Peoria. It's beginning to look like that will not be the case. It'll either be in Springfield or Bloomington, which makes that less attractive. The good news is, no matter what, we still have a pretty spectacular partnership with OSF. And I think in this, at a university that has very strong science programs, it makes me very happy to say that I think one of the reasons we've been able to successfully navigate some of this is we've been very aggressive from day one of following the science. And the science has really helped us understand how to do a testing protocol. Really understanding it, and a shout out to Dr. Higgs and the folks in our health center. Contact tracing has been absolutely critical to our ability to keep things under control, and they've done a really spectacular job of that. And so the testing is the wild card. One of the things that has happened this semester is the expenses associated with the COVID-19 response. We put something in the budget at the beginning of the year, trying to just get some estimate of what the cost would be. It's going to turn out being quite a bit more than we anticipated. And in our last presentation to the Board of Trustees, which was last week or the week before, I can't remember, it all starts blending together. But we're projecting now an $8 million deficit for the university. That's a couple million more than what we had initially had anticipated. And most of that is in COVID-19 related expenses that have been more than what we anticipated. Now that might actually get better if in fact, for example, the University of Illinois testing protocol becomes an option. Right now, pretty much the standard cost of a test is $100. If the University of Illinois test comes forward, it drops to $20 a test. That's a big difference. That would actually create a rather significant swing in the budget assumptions. And we're obviously working on that aggressively, and we'll see how that emerges. One of the things that is a good piece of news associated with the budget issues is, I will leave it to my business colleagues that are on the call here today to try to explain this, but the market has remained strong and a lot stronger than I anticipated, the financial markets. And that's been really good news for us because it means our endowment has stayed strong. And there are all kinds of, if you have detailed questions about this, I'll refer them all to Jeff Blade, who I see is on the call as well. But all kinds of bad things happen when our endowment drops. We get into their bank covenants and all kinds of other things that start potentially kicking in. So keeping the endowment strong is important, and thankfully it has been strong. So that helps us. But we've still got another, I think, tough semester ahead of us. The good news is we were looking at the positivity rate for this semester. As you might have noticed, it got really low for a number of weeks. The numbers did start ticking up. I checked with Nathan Thomas earlier today, and Nathan, if I say anything wrong here and you're on the phone, you're gonna jump in and correct me. But we'll have right now with on-campus testing and off-campus testing, which we tend to get results from both. We have 28 positives so far this week, but we've also done a lot more testing than we've done in previous weeks. We'll do over 400 tests this week, which will be the most we've done the entire time we've been testing this semester. And our positivity rate is probably going to be somewhere around 5%. And to put it in perspective, the county right now is 13.6%. The state is upwards of 15%, and even nationally, it's above 10%. So I'm pretty pleased with what, again, a compliment to our students for what they've been doing and helping us really get through this moment in time. The other thing we're continuing to watch is what things look like for fall 2021. And one of the things I feel increasingly confident about is we will be able to, unless something very strange happens, the science is all pointing to the fact that we will likely be able to be face-to-face in fall 2021. That's looking increasingly optimistic. I know there are a number of universities that were beginning to plan for a scenario that would not be the case, but I feel pretty confident that unless something strange happens, we will be face-to-face in 2021. The challenging part for us and for the entire market is applications are still way down for 2021. Our application rates here at Bradley specifically are down about 20%. And what we don't know yet, and this is still, it's just a wild card because none of us have ever operated in an environment like this before, is are the application rates down because everybody's delaying their applications this year? They're trying to just survive the semester, and then as they get closer to thinking about next year, those numbers will go up, we don't know. Or are they actually going to be significantly down for the entire market next year? And that's something that I don't think we'll really have a good sense of that probably till well into next semester. But that's something we're paying attention to. The senior leadership team could confirm that I've basically said that all of us on the senior leadership team are now part of the enrollment management team. And our job as a collective group is to really be thoughtful about how we can do our part to make sure that the enrollment numbers look strong for the fall. And the one thing that we're paying very close attention to, and this is something that everybody can help us with, quite frankly, is what's called the yield rate. And for those that aren't quite as familiar on how enrollment management works, we'll accept a certain number of students. We'll continue to keep the standards where they need to be to make sure we have high quality students coming in. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. The chair of our math department reminded me that the other day of how painful it can be when we don't do that. So thank you, Matt, for that. And it really has a ripple effect. So we'll continue to make sure that the standards are there. The challenge, and the one thing that we'll have to make sure we do to get the numbers we want, is the yield rate. Of those students that are accepted, we need to make sure a large percent of them actually make the decision to come here. And a lot of that will involve follow-up conversations. I know the academic units play a strong role often in helping make that happen. So that's going to be particularly important that we do that this year. So it's going to continue to be a challenging year. We'll continue to pay attention to things like the ongoing costs associated with COVID-19, obviously paying close attention to what the enrollment numbers look like for fall 2021. But as we go into this continued role of doing much of what we're doing today into the spring, I do think it's time to really just pause and recognize the success of having gotten through the face-to-face component of this semester successfully. That is a major accomplishment. And that really is because of the amazing work of the faculty, staff, and the students. And I wanted to take a moment to pause and recognize that and say a most sincere thank you to all of you for helping make that happen. Again, still got a little bit of the semester to go, but boy, what an amazing feat to have successfully survived our on-campus experience for this semester. So again, a most sincere thank you. And in this period where there are not always a lot of things to celebrate, I hope you all can take a moment and personally appreciate and thank yourself, if you will, for the amazing work that has been done this semester to make that happen. That's my update. I'm happy to talk about other issues or answer any questions you all may have. I just wanted to give you an update of kind of where we're at, and again, happy to answer any other questions or comments that you all may have.
President Standiford, it's Danielle Glassmeyer. You mentioned an $8 million deficit. Could you clarify that number? Is that due to COVID costs exclusively, or is that where we are in terms of the deficit that we're at? And can you benchmark that in relationship to where we were and where we hope to be?
Oh, it's great questions, by the way. And I should let Jeff answer this, but I'll jump into some of it. And Jeff, you're going to correct me if I get any of it wrong. So we had, and boy, so thank you for another reason I appreciate these questions, giving me a chance to do a shout out to our finance group. One of the things that I think I can say with some level of confidence is our finances were messy and not necessarily as clean as I would like. And the finance group has really done a deep dive over the last 6 months to get that cleaned up. So one of the things that I feel really much more comfortable about today is I feel confident in the numbers that we're working with. And that's a great place to be. And one of the things that Jeff shared with the board 2 meetings ago is that had we not made some changes, we would have hit this year with a $10 million structural deficit. We've been able to cut that in about half, which is so even without COVID, we still would have had about a $5 million deficit. COVID has added to that. So that has gotten us a little bit above where we would have been otherwise. But I mean, actually, it's interesting because I was talking to another university the other day, and I guess I should probably, since they shared this with confidential, I won't mention the university, but they are going to lose $100 million this year. Now they have a med school, and you don't want a med school right now. Med schools are hemorrhaging money. I talked to another university that's very similar to us in structure, and they're going to lose $15 million this year. So we're not alone in the marketplace. There's a lot of pressures going on, and hats off to my colleagues for really doing a good job of keeping the cost under control. So roughly about 3 million of that is specifically COVID related, and about 5 million is the structural deficit. Jeff, I'm looking at your box. Did I get that close to right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great.
Are there any other questions for President Standiford?
Did just want to do a quick follow-up, Danielle here. So what does that do in terms of benchmarking where we were hoping to be for next year? I know the math should be simple enough, but I'm a lowly English teacher.
Yeah, so well, the math is complicated, actually. It's not that simple. So you're right to suggest that it's complicated math on this. It gets us closer to where we need to be. We took a bigger hit this year than I think any of us wanted. I think we've been able to mitigate some of that. One of the things we'll be doing this year to try to get us more under control is if we can get the testing costs down for next semester, that could have a significant impact. That's one of the things we're looking at as well. And the other thing that I want to try to do is going to be tough in today's environment because it's tough to meet with people, but we're going to really work hard to increase our fundraising efforts for this year and see if we can close some of that gap with some aggressive fundraising. And we have I think you all know, we have a new interim VP of advancement, Erin Genovese. She's up and running fast. She's doing great work quickly. And I'm hoping that we can close a little bit more of that gap with fundraising. So it's still a work in progress, but not where we want to be, but relative to market, I think we're doing okay. Jeff, would you, again, every time I mention that kind of stuff, I always want to look at the CFO and make sure that we're on the same page on this one. So
we totally are. And we're beginning to think about the operating plan for next year. We won't start that work until early spring, but we're already beginning to think about it and continuing to identify things that will improve the business model. Because the commitment we did make to the board was that we would attempt to balance the budget within 2 years. And so obviously fiscal 21 and fiscal 22. So we've got work ahead of us because it's despite COVID, we still have some additional things we have to figure out. And development / fundraising is a major component of that. And then the alternative programming, new sources of revenue is the other piece that obviously we're making progress on that is part of that strategy.
So one more follow-up, moving from numbers to impact. I think all of us will be delighted to hear that you're focusing in on revenue production and increasing the money flow into the university. But given these setbacks, what is the outlook in terms of more negative measures? Are you anticipating investigating more eliminations of staff and faculty, changing the size of classes, etc.?
So I'll speak bluntly about that, and I'll put a proviso, right? So now if things were to totally fall apart in fall 2021, I think Jim might have mentioned something like this last time. And if things were to completely collapse in fall 2021, we'd have to think differently. Jeff and I've looked at this in pretty great detail. I am extremely aware of the fact that we run very thin right now, that resources are already stretched to the limit. So it is not our inclination to be looking at that at this point. We need to find other ways to identify opportunities to get the budget in balance. So we're doing really aggressive work on the fundraising on the new revenue front. We'll continue to find ways, so one of the things we're doing is with the Huron report, we're looking for ways to maybe get some organizational efficiencies. But things like centralized procurement, I think I've talked about that before, that we could perhaps, there's some opportunities to do some cost savings in those spaces, but that's the kind of stuff we're looking at this point. Now, I always have to put the proviso out, right? That if things were to completely collapse for fall 2021, we'd obviously have to think differently. I don't think that's going to be the case at this point. I actually believe that the drop we're seeing in enrollment has a significant part of that is the fact that the schools, the high schools right now, are so stressed and behind that they just haven't gotten around. In fact, we've gotten some indication that part of the challenge is the advisors just haven't had an opportunity to really even talk to students about what their plans are moving forward. So that's the number we'll be watching closely. That's the wild card in all this, quite frankly, is what our fall enrollment numbers look like. And if those are solid, I'll sleep a whole lot better, and we'll be, I think, a much stronger footing if those come in as the way I hope they do.
Thank you.
Jeff, again, I'm looking at your box. Did I say anything that makes you nervous?
Nope.
Okay, good.
I have
That
a
was a good, make sure you're in line with the CFO. Please go ahead.
Kalyani Nair, mechanical engineering. My son is a senior in high school at Richwoods, and he's applied to Bradley, and he's applied to other places too. The scenario that we are seeing as parents is that other schools are very proactive in responding to even applications. So the admission cycles are just starting.
Yeah.
But we've received so many emails from other schools just approaching the student saying, you've applied here, thank you, et cetera, and there's a lot of follow-up. I mean, the admission, we don't know about admissions yet, but even just from an application standpoint, the minute you apply, you start hearing from these schools by just emails. And these are emails coming from the admissions office, the deans of these offices. And we've also heard that the enrollments are high in many schools, like, the larger schools like Champaign and Georgia Tech and so on and so forth. So I think Bradley hasn't been, over the years, I've talked about this in our department, our college is aware of this. We haven't been very proactive in recruiting our local students. We haven't been doing much in terms of recruitment at all. Like the mail we receive from other colleges, like, I don't know how we receive it, but Yale sends us packages and packages of material. I mean, obviously they have the money, but there are also very small schools that also send us a lot of application material. And as I said, as soon as you apply, we just started our application process and we've been receiving so many emails, but not one from Bradley, So I just think there's a lot that we can do on this end to increase enrollment. And I've talked to a lot of the Richwood kids. My son goes to Richwoods. Not even half of them are thinking of applying to Bradley. And these are really smart kids who want to stay, not that they want to leave town. They want to stay in town because of financial reasons, because of COVID, but they know very little about it. I've had students from his high school attend counselor sessions from other places. So WashU, there was a session. I mean, so many schools go there to Richwoods, and they have these counselors working from them. And I'm just surprised that Bradley has not done anything. And I've been talking about this for a long time, and no one's done anything about it. And I'm just at this point really frustrated because I'm seeing it in my own experience. Sorry about the.
No, I appreciate you sharing. I'm still learning about our processes, so I appreciate you sharing that information.
I think there needs to be something really done because we have a rich source of, really smart kids who are financially, who can make it to Bradley. I mean, but there's just not enough effort being made in terms of an outreach activity. I mean, I go to these kids and I talk to them, and that's when they're really even understanding about how Bradley is and, you know, how it is set up. I mean, Richwoods has a very good IB program. They're really good, smart kids. I mean, I'm really wondering why we can't tap into that resource. And I've talked about this for the past, I don't know how many years at different levels, but it's never gone through. I don't know who the right people are. So I'm just bringing it up now. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And it's something for me to be able to follow up on. And I will privately, publicly say, I'm glad to hear you say all the good things about Richwoods, because that's where my girls will go. So it makes me very happy to know that it's, yeah, I kind of knew that anyway, but I'm glad to hear you're having a good experience.
And just not Richwoods, there's Manual. I mean, I've had students work in the robotics team that come from different schools together, and the Peoria School District is really good. So we're not even reaching out to Peoria School District, forget Dunlap. I mean, Dunlap is even, you know, supposed to be a better school district. It's just unfortunate that we are not able to even talk to these people, which is, I don't know, they are so completely not aware of the scholarships. I mean, I've been tracking this for many years now. Every year in engineering, in mechanical engineering, we have like one student coming from Richwoods, one student out of 400 students that graduate from Richwoods. And I know from my personal experience that there are many of them who are very capable, smart kids, financially good kids. I mean, there's the whole perception that, you know, they can't afford it, which is not true. So there's a lot that can be done. And like I said, I've been talking about this, but it just doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. So thank you.
Well, and again, I appreciate people. We're going to be doing a deep dive on enrollment in a variety of ways this year. So that's I appreciate that feedback.
Are there any other comments, questions for President Standiford? Hearing none, we will turn the floor over to Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Zakai.
I have a short report, and if the president's report was short, then mine's really quite a bit shorter than his. So let me start by announcing, well, you've heard this already. We did a public announcement, but I'm pleased that Brad Andrish has agreed to serve as the director of the Office of Sponsored Programs. I'm excited to return to a model where OSP is led by a member of the faculty. In Brad's case, he has great credentials with sponsored research and research in general. I think he's going to do a great job in there, and I'm very pleased that he's going to do that. I anticipate we're going to move that office over to where the grad school is currently located and incorporated over there, so that that office is not out in the boonies as we make this switch. Second, I sent out a message earlier today about annual evaluations and scholarship in light of COVID. That was a message I worked on with the deans and shared with Matt Tim earlier in the week. But essentially the idea is, in terms of annual evaluations, that this year's evaluation should be moderated by the fact that really you had just over half a year. Well, last year you had just over half a year of what I would describe as kind of normal function, where pursuing your scholarship was in a traditional way was possible. And this year it would appear that that's not going to be possible at all, between teaching load and access to labs and everything else. Certainly we will count whatever scholarship that you're able to produce and want to count, but we don't want, in terms of annual evaluations for the kind of year that we've experienced, to count against anyone. And I think it's explained reasonably well in the letter that I provided. The last thing I want to mention is that with the deans, we're trying to once again start looking forward. We've really been dealing with an emergent situation and dealing with an emergency, and it's been ongoing, and there hasn't been a lot of breathing room for much of anything else. But with the deans this last week, we started a return to a conversation about gender equity and the report from the Gender Equity Task Force. We're gonna start working on that again. I realize that much of the work we need to do is probably going to involve additional committee work and things like that. And so we're going to slow walk this a little bit only because of all of the work that the faculty and staff are doing. But what I really want to do is get this lined up so that we're in a position to start making fast progress on these issues as we return to what we all hope is more of a normal experience in terms of Bradley University next year with the start of the fall of 2021. But I'd like to be lined up, do the things we can do now around this, and be lined up where we need committee work or Senate action, things like that, that we're lined up and ready to do that with the next year. So we're starting that work again. And we'll be looking at some of the other things that we need to pay attention to in terms of that looking forward. I mentioned to President Staniford a few weeks ago that I was looking forward to looking forward, and that is part of what we're hoping to do, and maybe start to return to something that feels a little bit normal, certainly a bit more strategic in terms of some of the work that we're able to do, and not constantly be dealing with things on an emergent basis. Anyway, that's my report, and I'm happy to try and answer questions if you have any.
Walter, this is Megan Remmel from Poli-Sci. I was just wondering, I know that this has come up with students in response to the cancellation of spring break, which again, I completely understand, but I don't know about I think they're calling it a dead week, of having a week of nothing being due. And I don't know what traction that's gotten, and if it's possible. I especially don't know about the actual enforcement side of it. So I just wanted to bring it up because I promised my students I would.
I've spoken with the deans about this, and I really like an idea that is getting traction in the Foster College of Business. Here's my fear. Let me start with my fear. My fear is if we were to declare a dead week. Well, I have several fears there. One fear is that if we declare a dead week, all it's going to do in a number of areas is double up work downstream from that, and it'll double up work for the faculty, and it'll double up work for the students. So if you don't give a test, or if you don't have a paper due, it'll simply come out later. The bigger fear that I've got around this is that students will see this as a license to leave campus and take essentially a spring break anyway if we do this as 1 week. So the model that I like and want to suggest that we think about, but with a lot of qualifiers, because it's not an ideal approach, is, as I said, one that Foster College is looking at right now, and that's rotating among the departments in Foster College through the month of March, so that you have one department a week, essentially trying to have a dead week. You mentioned, Megan, what would the enforcement be? And frankly, we can't really have enforcement around this. I can envision, well, let me give you an example from my own discipline of communication. When you have as many students as we have in the speech classes, in the first year, second year speech classes for the BCC, you're listening to speeches virtually every week. The students are presenting speeches virtually every week. And there's really not a time that they could say, nope, we're not gonna have any speeches this week, I believe. I think that in some disciplines, because of the way things build, it's gonna be difficult to enforce something like this. What I would argue, though, is if you're able to do this, that is, if you work through the college, and there's agreement on this, and you're able to take one of the weeks off in March for your department where classes are meeting, students are learning, knowledge is being shared, that we should do that, and if possible, try to limit the kind of expectations that we have of the students, so that if we can not have tests, not have papers due, minimize the amount of homework, we should try and do that. But with the realization that you're going to have some places and some classes, et cetera, that it's really not possible to do that. I also want to add this, if you're a double major, so this may work reasonably well for juniors and seniors who have one major. If you're a double major, it's not going to work as well. If you're a first year or second year student, it's not going to work as well either, because you're enrolled in classes across the institution. And so the ability to spread that work out is going to be a challenge. So there are a number of challenges with an approach like this, but I am very reluctant, and at this point I would say unwilling to have what you're describing as a dead week, honestly, because I'm already aware that there are students saying that they don't care if the university is going to have spring break or not, they're going to take their spring break. And we've been hearing about this a little bit. My fear is if we have a dead week, it's really going to result in students leaving campus and creating all sorts of problems for us on the back end of something like that.
Walter, this is Danielle. A related question to the one that Megan posed, and your reasoning on this problem with the dead week resonates really well. It makes a lot of sense. I have been in conversations with the people in counseling, all of our talented counselors down there in the basement of Markin. They're expressing really deep concerns about this. And the idea of certainly relief, which is what you're talking about, what would happen from a rolling week off, that would be relief for the students. But I believe that what I'm understanding from the counselors is that students actually will benefit a great deal more, even from a very limited, complete unplug, right? That need, when we just give them a week off, it just means that those stresses lift a little bit, right? And certainly, as a teacher in English, I know that if I tell my English majors, don't read that novel this week, most of them won't listen. There are a few who will listen, but they should probably not be English majors if they don't. So I guess I have a multi-part question, and it is thinking about, that as sort of that standard that's hitting that sweet spot so that we give them some kind of relief, but it's not long enough to go away. The other side is with Zoom and high flex classes, dual delivery classes, it's really hard to regulate anyway. Somebody's going to get a terrible stomach ache, right? And we'll see them on a beach. But then the final thing, I guess the most important and unfrivolous part is I do hope that you're bringing the counselors into these conversations. They have that frontline experience of understanding, and they're charged, right, with making sure that they understand the mental health toll that is taken, that these students are experiencing. And boy, I'll tell you, it's not just because they're friends of mine, right, but long days, exhausting days for them. And they only have the best interests of the students at heart with this. They know that it's got to be the academic side that makes the decision about the best for academics. But I just urge you strongly to make sure that you're aggressively consulting counseling when you're making these decisions.
Thank you, Danielle. That's good advice. What do you mean by a complete unplug?
Some of the models I think are that the folks from counseling shared, I think are probably too late. But something like, you know, a commitment to 2 or 3 days where there just are no classes, or where then maybe there are classes, but the only work that needs to happen happens within the boundaries of that classroom. So there's no preparation required. They talked about, there were models that they extended to me that included things like, you know, every 3rd Wednesday, they get the day off, right? That would have worked with that if we had held on to the 16-week model. And so that ship has sailed. But the other model that they had was suggesting that we have what might be understood as, I hate to say the word in academics, but fun classes, right? So like creative days that engage the students in that activity in a very different way. So that sense, not necessarily of stopping the instruction, but of finding those ways in which you can mix it up a little bit. We joked around about like having like, you know, classes like, you know, knitting competitions and stuff. And I don't know, that could work for math classes, right? Who has the longest scarf at the end of the semester? But it is, what I'm gathering from the counselors is that sense that to have, even if it's just one day, that there's absolutely nothing that's due that day, that they can have, that can have a very, very healthful effect.
So a couple of things. One, I'm right there with you. I'm very concerned about the students. And it's, you know, it is, and if I'm not expressing appropriate levels of concern about the students in some of the meetings that I'm in, I will tell you, Nathan Thomas is right there reminding me of this, and he's interacting with those counselors on a regular basis since they report to him, and he's expressed a lot of concern about this as well. So you are right, and just because I think you understand this, but I want to make sure everybody understands this, is because we essentially extended that week out of vacation, we can't put, for example, dead days into the semester because of our responsibilities to the Department of Education under Title IV. And the federal financial aid responsibilities that we have. And so we can't kind of go back now and create days where students don't have to have classes. So I like the idea of maybe, you know, I'll talk with the deans about this a little bit as well, about the possibility of creating some individual days where nothing is due. I'm a little dubious of it, again, as I've had these conversations with a variety of people, including with Matt Tim the other day. You know, Matt is I think also expressed a lot of concern about students, but points out that there are certain things that have to be accomplished in the math classes, and that he at this point doesn't have enough time within the class periods he has to get everything done that he needs to do. And so we have a variety of areas like that where there may not be much in the way of wiggle room. We're going to try. The president has made it very clear and has said we don't necessarily know what it's going to be at this point, but there are things that we're going to come up with some things to try and provide some relief for students, and he's made it clear that we have to do it. But I appreciate, Danielle, your concern and sharing with me. I do think I should probably have some of those direct conversations with the counselors myself and see. We'll see if they have time to talk to me, though. Other questions?
Walter, I wondered if you might speak a little bit more about the evaluations email.
Sure.
So it's come out now, but I think a lot of departments, maybe all of them, I have no idea, have already finised their evaluations.
Right, and I understand that this was a recommendation that actually came out of LAS, and it came out. I received it, I think, probably as as chairs were finishing up their evaluations. And we talked about whether or not I should send it out anyway. We've got some modifications to my letter as a result of that. I think if you look at this, at the letter, I'm gonna read the last paragraph of the letter. I imagine you have your computers open. You may have already opened it and looked at it. Annual evaluations for the academic year 1920 should reflect reduced expectations for scholarly productivity commensurate with the interruption mid-semester. Annual evaluations for the academic year 2021 should not include any expectations for scholarly productivity. While we will recognize whatever scholarship you produce, no one should be negatively evaluated during the 18-month period for failing to advance their scholarly agenda. What I could envision happening is possibly the dean or possibly the chair may go back and take a look. I apologize for this coming out at this point in time, but this was, as I said, we started working on this when I received this feedback, and seeing if those evaluations are consistent with that perspective. If they are not, maybe a conversation, maybe a slight rewrite in terms of in consultation with the faculty member. My hope is that there isn't much needed in the way of rewrite. I think that the chairs are pretty reasonable, and I would have expected that they would have taken into consideration as they were writing their evaluations that the opportunities during spring semester for scholarship were probably pretty limited for a lot of the faculty. Not for everybody, I realize that. And that's why we've got some, I think, some wiggle room within the letter there. I'm hoping I haven't created more problems with this letter, but it was, as I said, after conversing with the deans, it was something that they thought that I should work on getting out. Other questions?
Walter, Walter, it's Jackie Hogan. Just to follow up on that, since your email does say that there is not any expectation for scholarship for next year's, when we write up our recommendations next fall, is that number just going to be struck off of the evaluation form? Because this year we did have to still give a numerical rating for scholarship.
So the way I think this is a conversation, and that's the way I would put it. Part of what I was saying in there is, look, if you have a productive year anyway, then you should get credit for a productive year. And so having a conversation, faculty member having a conversation with the chair and or possibly the dean and saying, look, I've had a good year. I want this year to be included in terms of scholarship. I think that a faculty member has a right to do that. So I wouldn't strike research from everybody's, but if somebody said, look, I didn't have an opportunity to work on my scholarship this year, it just wasn't going to happen, then certainly I think that should be an option open to the faculty member. I see this as let's err on the side of the faculty member here, give them an opportunity to count scholarship if they've had a productive year, not count scholarship if they haven't. I've been in situations in my own career as an academic where I had enough data collected and enough projects going on that I could have, even though I couldn't get into a data collection mode, I still had opportunities maybe to revise, resubmit, get things in, have them proceed through a process. But the other thing I think that's going on right now that we have to pay attention to as well is I expect that the editorial boards of journals are also lagging as well. I know that I still do a little bit of journal reviewing, not a lot, and it's hard for me to keep up with that. I can't imagine, for all of you, I know a number of you do are referees for journals, and I suspect that your ability to keep up with that work is really challenged. So it means not only is this particular funnel being challenged by what can I get in the funnel, it's also being challenged by what's coming out on the other side in terms of the turnaround from journals and possibly conferences and things like that.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that that's being taken into consideration. I think it probably would be useful to have some sort of statement in writing for next year's round of evaluations that allows us to strike that line, strike that number at the faculty members' preference. And have them not be disadvantaged by that. We've had this discussion within LAS. Some chairs were advocating doing away with numbers altogether for evaluations, but then it was decided that that might disadvantage our junior faculty at the university level. So having some sort of policy in writing that allowed us to do away with that scholarship evaluation number, I think would be very useful.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. I'll talk about it with the deans. These are the kinds of things where I don't want to make a decision myself without input and feedback from the deans on something like this.
Walter, if I could weigh in here, I would say try to give flexibility at the department level.
That's where in general, I would like to be able to do it. I agree.
Any other questions for the provost?
I have one more comment. If you are looking at evaluations, I would be in favor of revising that form in general. So I think that there are multiple things that could be improved.
So that was, I did attend the last curriculum committee meeting, and it was one of the things, I don't know that we talked specifically about the form, though I happen to agree with you about the form. We were talking about evaluations and in particular student evaluations of teaching, and certainly my concerns, and I think a number of the committee members' concerns about bias that we see oftentimes see in student evaluation of teaching. And so that was, I think that was a pretty good discussion. And one of the things you may remember, for those of you thinking back to February, March of last year, I had a goal of having a department chair retreat where we were going to talk about evaluation of teaching. I'm going to reprise that for spring. I've become increasingly confident about our ability to do things over Zoom. So I'd like to reprise that for the spring, where we have this meeting where we get together, work on, I think, collective wisdom about how to evaluate teaching so that we're not so dependent on student evaluations of teaching as I think in many areas where we're primarily dependent on that. I think it has a role, but I think the role should be fairly minimal. I don't have a lot of confidence in student evaluation of teaching, and I'd like to see us move into some other directions. And so I'd like to have that as a conversation, and then take that conversation and move it into curriculum and regulation and talk about how to make improvements and changes there.
Anything else? Hearing none, we have a few minutes for our CFO, COO, Jeff Blade, to make comments.
Thanks, Matt. I'll keep my comments very brief in the interest of time. I know we're bumping up on the hour. I would just add, in addition to what President Staniford shared earlier at the Board of Trustees meeting, we did share a review of where we're at. What we further shared was thoughts and comments on other things we're doing within finance to try and not only navigate through COVID-19, but also to understand and build a long-term sustainable business model for Bradley. So part of what we're trying to do is diagnose some of the factors and issues that have led to ongoing deficits for a number of years. We're also working hard to improve overall financial transparency. So one of the things we've been able to do in the last several months is begin to close the books on a monthly basis. We used to close quarterly, so being able to close monthly gives us a much better ability to monitor where we're at from a financial performance standpoint going forward. We've also built a very granular cash flow model, which enables us to understand the cash needs of the institution so that we don't run into any issues. And we're beginning the process of planning for an implementation of a new budgeting process for next year that is basically loosely titled responsibility-based budgeting, which will enable us to have essentially a P&L by college and function of the university. So just to add, we'll share more at upcoming meetings, but just wanted to let you know that we're continuing to work on the financial viability, transparency, and underlying processes to run the university financially.
Any questions?
Jeff, I have a question. I'm Thomas Palakiel from English. Is there a possibility that the spousal carve-out policy would be withdrawn by next year?
I believe that it was actually just implemented. I think Crystal Elliott is on this call. She is the head of HR. So I think she can talk to it in more detail than I can. And I know we're near time, so we're happy to follow up on that question specifically.
So it is something that just went into play October 1st. So spouses who are on the health insurance plan that have coverage elsewhere through a different plan, a different employer, are asked to go get on that employer's insurance plan. That's something that is happening as other companies are trying to maintain their cost. So there's about a $600,000 savings that we had for our plan by being able to have spouses that could go get coverage through their employer. So it was money that the organization can save. Clearly, the spouse doesn't have coverage elsewhere, they're still able to stay on our plan.
And I would just add that is standard practice across virtually every industry that I know of, and it's not a new thing. I started to see it 15 to 20 years ago. So that is not something that is new. It is simply Bradley trying to be contemporary with other organizations.
Could I ask a follow-up? Crystal, it might be for you, it might be for you, Jeff, I'm not sure. You mentioned $600,000 savings. That's from the spousal carve-out alone. So what is estimated that the other changes to insurance, what is that estimated cost savings that's going to come from that?
So the other changes being the addition of the deductible and the co-insurance changes. I'd have to come back to you with a number on that. We had just looked at the spousal surcharge and this thought was fresh in my head, but I'd have to come back and give you a number that we had anticipated.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. I guess I would follow up too by saying that I'm alive to and appreciative of the idea of bringing us into standard practice with, other institutions, etc. That would make a whole lot of sense. I think if Bradley's compensation generally was on par with other institutions, we do lag the market in at least a lot of sectors because I think of I don't know, I won't speculate why, but we do lag the market in terms of compensation generally. So one of the things that many of us have been able to count on is the idea that our out-of-pocket medical, we don't have to worry about going to the doctor, right? And Bradley may not be paying me right competitively, but Bradley is at least taking care of me. So watching that chip away a little bit, I think it's really hard to keep in mind the statements of appreciation for faculty when we see those two things, right? Salaries, again, flatlining, and we know we're in terrible shape. We hear about it all the time, right? But salaries flatlining at the same time that basically these expenses that we've enjoyed Bradley's care for us in these areas, that those costs are now just basically being shifted from Bradley onto us. So for some of my constituents, they're talking about that, worst case scenario, they're basically going to be feeling this in the year ahead as much as a 10% salary reduction. They may be being dramatic. I haven't looked at their bottom lines, but I can speak to if it's a worst case scenario for my family, it will be at least a 5% reduction in salary effectively. So the spousal carve out is not something that impacts me, but I did want to give voice to that sort of human impact of this dollar-based change. I understand, I think we all do. You can't spend money if you don't have it. But those kind of shifts in that larger view, I think add sting to the impact of the change.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is in the adjustments that we did make. So first of all, benefits had not been reviewed in, I think it was more than 7 years at Bradley, which is certainly not a best practice. And what I can tell you is that in the adjustments we did make, we went nowhere near what the market actually is. So the majority of the rest of the world. So for me coming from the private sector and joining higher ed, even my wife commented recently, she cannot believe how lavish the benefits are. She's never seen anything like it in my working career. So I agree, I hear you. We're doing the best we can. We'll continue to evolve. I think there's a lot more we can do on health and wellness other than just how much people are paying in premiums. So, and that's the reason that Crystal's here, and she comes with a strong both healthcare and HR background. So a lot more to come strategically on that front. But we were trying to find the balance between a benefit that frankly is relatively unheard of in the world anymore, and not going all the way to market with the rest of the world.
Jeff, may I add one more detail? We were paying a penalty. Isn't there a way for us to continue to pay a penalty and compensate for that? Because of the spousal carve out, we were not able to find insurance. My wife doesn't have insurance right now. She works for a temp agency, and they offer an insurance which is in name only. So it would have been nice if we could get some kind of high deductible insurance through Bradley.
Yeah, well, so thank you for that comment. And why don't I'll have Crystal can follow up with you specifically and we can talk through it. I mean, we're trying to find solutions that work for everybody as well. And this is a balancing game. So we hear you and we want to comments like that and input. Very, very willing and interested to listen and see what solutions we can find, and we're obviously here to partner and be part of the Bradley family, not to simply cut benefits.
Yeah, Jeff, I think where this has the greatest impact is on our lowest paid colleagues. And that may be by discipline or by job description. So I think that that's something that needs to be kept in mind. Are there other comments, questions? Hearing none. I'm going to be bold. New business is listed. Does anyone have anything they would like to put before the Senate?
I personally don't have anything surprise, it's Danielle. I personally don't have anything new to add. I would ask if administrators kindly could you take a look and make sure that you're keeping track of the chat.
Yeah, that's recorded. Hearing no new business, I would consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Vote with your mice. We will see you in about 2 weeks. Well, 3 weeks.
Real quick here, Matt, since you are recognized as the host right now, the YouTube streaming is now live still, and it will not let me halt it.
Okay.
So
Do I need
either,
to end?
yeah, if you could end the meeting for all, unless there's any last minute comments, that will close that out for us.
I think the hangers on are just hangers on. They haven't got to their mouse as quickly as the rest of us. So thanks, Tim.